Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I love the fact of the matter is where we start off in the episode is the whole, it's Dembe's birthday and everything. I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice celebration and stuff like that. It's just so interesting considering the fact is, it's like, when you actually think about, the small things that they celebrate and stuff like that, and in consideration of all, the crime they get mixed up in, it's like, you got to celebrate the small moments in life and stuff like that. It's like, oh my god, this thing, yeah, I went back to that shop to go find it, and it was like, oh no, oh, that guy said that we were following us. I just had to say something so you wouldn't know that he was getting it for you. It was just like this adorable moment between Red and Dembe, and everyone's kind of celebrating. It's a nice moment. But obviously it's there's a deal going down with some coffin that basically Reddington has, and so basically he goes to Ukraine, which even Dembe was like, shouldn't do that. Literally, people know you kind of worked on the other side of things, so the separatists are going to want to kill you. And he was like, well, to be fair, they will just make them think I'm dead. Shows up pretending like he's dead, and it's like, all right, he has that little hidden vault and everything, and gets the sarcophagus. It's so interesting because he's like, oh, so basically, essentially, the coffin is kind of like a Russian doll type of situation. The one he has, the way he was kind of explaining it, because I was wondering if there were smaller ones, but I think it's the one he has is the smallest one, but there's bigger ones, and it all kind of works together. But it turns out the dude he was working with kind of betrays him, which is it sucks because every time Raymond turns around, it's like someone's betraying him, and it's like, oh, that sucks. But at the same time, it's like, well, this person, someone he cares about was kidnapped, and it's like, well, they're on their way, but they managed to get away. But they get it evaluated, and it's like, oh yeah, Cynthia's like, yep, it's not worth anything. And he's like, what? It's like, yeah, it's a fake. It's like, what? And even Reddington's laughing about it. He's like, oh my god, this is hilarious. And she's like, wow, you are really taking this bet. Because he finds out, for him, it's like, if this is a fake, there's a potential that the other five are fake. Because other people, I think it's the other five people have one of the other boxes. So for him, he's thinking, if mine's a fake, most likely theirs are a fake too. So for him, he looks at this as an opportunity. He's like, you know what this means, though? He's talking to Dimma. He's like, we can find the forger and potentially find the real boxes. And if that's the case, it's like we get all the profits. While they have the fakes, we'll have all 6 real ones. And it's like, oh, and just like Reddington, it's like, oh, it's going to be kind of almost like, oh my God, it's going to be a blast. And so what does he do? He gets the FBI to do the heavy lifting for him. It's like, well, they'll be able to find, because using this as an opportunity, oh my God, you can take down this really bad, bad forger, not bad forger, but this forger and everything, which is which even once again, it's not, they cut through the pretenses because Liz is like, so you basically want us to help you find this forger so you can basically make a crap ton of money off this situation. He's basically like, yeah. Interestingly enough, we had that conversation where it's Ressler walks in talking to Liz. It's like, hey, I'm so sorry about your mom. She only died because of me and everything. It's because I was the one who went looking. It's like, Ressler, my mom's alive. Wait, what? Reddington said, yep, it was all an act and everything. It's like, whoa. And now, obviously, Red still has not admitted that that's her mom. And she's worried about asking because she's knows that Reddington's just going to he's gonna say no. So the whole question then becomes well, what do you do? Do you play dumb asking the question even though you know the answer to it just to see what he actually will say? And it was actually interesting because she was like, was that person that was the woman from Paris, was that my mom? And he was like, I know how much you want it to be your mom, but your mom is gone. To be fair, I guess for Reddington, the reason why he doesn't even want to answer that is because it's it opens up a whole can of worms because Katarina isn't who Katarina once was. And I think at the same time, it's a situation of also she's already gone. You already think she's dead. Why kind of learned that that woman that was gunned down was your mom and everything. So I don't want to drag that up. It's just, it's history. Your mom, I mean, to be fair, in his mind, it's the Katarina, Liz's mom, well, Masha's mom, to be more specific, died all those years ago. The woman there isn't, in his mind, that's not the same Katarina, so I guess that's why he kind of lumps it. That's his justification for it too. But also it's because Reddington has a steep aversion to the to ever telling the truth. So there's that whole situation. I also thought that whole thing was kind of adorable too, with the whole thing between Liz and Ressler, with the whole situation of for one, it's Agnes is in this play of, Cinderella and stuff like that. Not Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. And the fact of the matter is that he kind of talks about his past in it. And when it's like, oh, and like Cooper's like, oh, don't, Ressler told us your secret. And Liz is looking like, wait, did you tell? And it's like, no, it's about the play and everything. And it's super adorable because they're like, get us tickets. We want to go. And I'm like, oh, it's, it's her family. So it's all super adorable and everything. Also, even Reddington being like, don't worry, I'm going to be back in time for Agnes. And I'm like, it's just, I don't know, the adorableness that is like that whole situation I thought was kind of neat. But kind of getting into the real, like, meat and potatoes of the situation. It was a really interesting episode, like, obviously kind of understanding, like, oh, who these forgers are, finding out, like, is this woman Victoria in particular, she's robbing her own family in particular, because the dude that she's working with, he suffered from, like, basically his son ended up getting addicted to this medication from, like, her father's company, and it ended up, he ended up overdosing from it. So basically, he needs, like, all the money she's making from selling these, well, stealing the real thing, this real art and all this from her dad, and then and then replacing it with really good forgers. It's actually kind of interesting when you kind of break down, like, because my experience with the white collar crimes and stuff like that stems from the TV show White Collar on USA Network, obviously kind of under the Universal NBC umbrella, so tying that in that regard. But the fact of the matter is, that was kind of my real, like, true, well, I mean, it's a fictional show, but that was kind of like my biggest experience with white collar crimes and stuff like that. But it was interesting, like, how, like, basically how it's done, like how she goes about, like, copying, like, paintings and stuff like that. It was, like, it's actually really interesting when you kind of break it down, like the technical aspect of it, because even Aram is like, you're not even really like because forgers can only go so far, but it's almost like real good forgers are more like engineers with kind of like the setups they use to recreate forgeries and stuff like that. And I think that's such a fascinating aspect to it, especially like the way she went about it, like using like a mirror obscura type of technique and stuff like that. It was actually really fascinating, but it's kind of interesting because obviously for her, it's like, because at the beginning you can tell there was something there where he was like, I shouldn't be getting mad at you. This isn't your fault. She's like, no, like the fact of the matter is after what you've lost, like, of course I'm good, because they didn't make as much money on this particular sale that they were trying to make. Like it was supposed to be like $3 million for the, but the dude was like, because of the black market, it's down to 900. They got like 1.2, but still, right, I completely forgot to talk about, like, because I was on that point, but circle back to the point I was making, is the fact is all the money they're making from this is to give him defense, because her father has tons and tons of money to spend on lawyers. Obviously, on the opposite side of this suit and everything, it's like home dude doesn't have the money to fight her father, so she's trying to give him a chance, because this is getting back at her dad, because it's like realizing like kind of the criminal her father is. So she feels like as his daughter, it's up to me, because his sins kind of, I think for her, she kind of feels like I have to kind of rectify the mistakes that my father made, And the sad thing is, even like when the cops show up, because they ended up tracking home dude down, the fact is that they end up talking to Victoria and her family, which obviously Victoria's like, oh, like, did you find out who it is? And I like that they're playing it close to the vest, because Liz is like, yeah, we haven't really identified the person yet, but it's like, we know that they know who it is. It's interesting that, and I think that's kind of like the neat, like, little cat and mouse of the whole thing of like not overstepping what in an investigation and stuff like that, So I thought that was kind of fascinating, but especially like the father's response to it is of like, okay, this is what we're going to do to, okay, you're telling us what we should do about keeping our art safe. Now I'm going to tell you what you do. It's like, that kind of shows you how much of a power hungry asshole he is. The fact of the matter is you're telling the FBI what they should do. It's like, I think you got things a little twisted, but for him, it's like, I'm the one with all this push and power that basically I'm going to make. Essentially, he didn't say this, but you can almost imply that basically he wanted like to use his money and power and position to basically make it so that everyone would kind of respond, like the FBI would kind of go at this case the way he wants them to basically make home dude's life a living hell and stuff like that. But even Victoria's being like, oh, like you should be a little more sympathetic. I mean, you can't blame the guy for what he lost. And then her dad's almost kind of like, oh, you agree with this criminal? It's like, to be fair, he's a criminal, yes. Is he doing the worst thing? Yes, it's once again, it's a crime. He could be doing worse things. He could have kidnapped someone, could have held him for ransom. It's like, no, he's stealing your artwork. It's not the worst thing ever. That's why I'm kind of like, just the way he acting, I was like, oh my God, this atrocity, what he's done to our family. It's like, what? yeah, he's robbed you, sure, but I guess it's like, it's to me, it seemed more like a principle for her father to be like, oh, like no one takes from me, like I'm powerful, rich and powerful, like how dare you steal from me, type of. It seemed like it more so hurt his pride. It's like, oh, someone stole from me, how dare you, more than like, oh, my family could be. That's what it, it seemed like it was more so from that angle with the whole situation. But nevertheless, I do love at the same time Reddington is kind of, once again, Reddington do what he always does, let the FBI do the heavy lifting while he kind of sneaks through kind of like the back door and kind of find his back way to like tracking down the Blacklister in particular. Ended up going to the guy that she, because at first he meets with the guy at the restaurant and everything, and it's like, oh yeah, dude said he was your wife's ex-husband. It's like, my wife wasn't, and then Reddington's like, hey, sorry, I couldn't really say why I was really here. In fact, the matter is, the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh, I'm your wife's ex-husband. And it's like, he's like, are you even married? He's like, honestly, it doesn't even matter. But they get like that shrimp, not shrimp platter, but that whole like large like thing of like shrimp or whatever. And so it's kind of like, I know, he's like, secretly, I know that you've basically been stealing stuff that was stolen. He's like, I'm not here to bust up your operation or whatever. I just need a name, just kind of, it's like, because the FBI is kind of closing in and stuff like that. I could just kind of leave the FBI to you, or, so that ended up leading him to the guy that Victoria directly, the dude who's kind of like the middleman about selling stuff, threatening to kind of, and I love that we also get an interesting little bit of tidbit that where Reddington stands with the whole bathtub situation, because I've never heard that argument until like I got older, where people be like, taking a bath is nasty because you're bathing in your juices, essentially, and even Reddington's making that point. So I'm like, oh, it's interesting to see where Reddington stands on the whole thing. But he's like, beside the point, tell us, or we're gonna drop this waffle maker in there. And it's like, all right, you gave us a name, cool. You want some food? So Denbei's going off to make some waffles and stuff like that. I love it. It's like you were literally you're threatening to kill the dude with it, electrocute him with it. Now it's like, actually, let's use that to, fry up some waffles and stuff like that. So I love that. But even like the whole situation of, Victoria and like how they managed that whole situation, like him being the distraction and everything. Because obviously Victoria wanted to bail out because it's like, you're going to go to jail. But for him, it's like, I'll go to jail gladly for this, because if you kind of get taken down with all of this, like the fight is over. Because I think it was like a mass lawsuit type of situation, a civil suit type of situation where multiple people came into play, like multiple people pulled their money together, but he was kind of the forefront to the suit and everything. So I think that's what that came down. Because we never actually met anyone else in a lawsuit, not unless it was just him. But I feel like with him being arrested, you think the suit would kind of die. But I think I think of other people. It's like, just keep, because he ends up bringing it up later on, just kind of keep funneling the money there. Like, you need to keep going, because it was pretty impressive, like him being a distraction and everything. You could tell, I kind of had a feeling Liz probably would have figured it out first, just because like the way, you could tell like she was like that Victoria's different from her parents. She was the most sympathetic, being like kind of like she was the one trying to be like, oh, you should understand where he's coming from, where her parents are kind of like, no, like even her mom was like, oh, don't believe, honey, she doesn't believe him. Do you? And like her mom even acting like that. So it's like her mom and dad kind of have that perspective. So it should have been kind of pretty obvious because how sympathetic she was. But I guess you would think like, oh, maybe she's just a decent person, because you kind of feel sad at the end of the day, understanding why he's doing this. It's like they're the bad guys, and it's like, we're sorry about that, but it's like, you got to put that gun down. So, but he wasn't trying to die. He was just trying to give Victoria enough time to switch out the fake and the real. So that was interesting. I did like Reddington and her like having a sit down, and Reddington being who he is. It's like, honestly, I'm not here to bust up your operation. I mean, he's like, I think he even said it's like, it's a little convoluted, the whole like you going after your dad and all this situation. But at the end of the day, your dad's kind of a criminal, like he's kind of shitty in what he does. So it's kind of like, I'm not going to bust up your operation. In fact, you tell me where the box is. All I'm asking for a name. I'll leave you to it and everything. Maybe we could work together from time to time. It's like, I always like it when Reddington ends up finding new friends, except for, those situations where like literally, wasn't it this season or was that last season? obviously the whole thing of people getting close to you, betraying you type of situation. Obviously there's one situation, obviously that, the Francesca situation, but I'm also trying to think of like the Smokey situation. I'm like, I'm trying to remember. I was like, was that this season or was that last season? I want to say that might have been last season. Maybe. I don't remember. Like I said, so much stuff blurs in my head. Regardless of whatever the situation may be, it's like, oh, you don't want to. I mean, but it seems like she seems, Victoria seems decent enough, and I'm curious to see what applications that might be a thing of like, oh, they're setting it up this early, but then later on that's going to play off in a big way, like him joining forces with Victoria. Like, oh, I need you in a big way. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how that ultimately ends up playing out. But I do like that Ressler kind of pieces it together. Like I said, it's interesting because Liz didn't figure it out, but like Ressler did, because he was like, we checked everybody except your mom, your dad, and you, and it's like basically like there's no evidence to prove that she's the one behind this, because home dude won't sell her out, because he's like, you're too important to this situation. You got to keep doing what you're doing to kind of keep the money flowing into the situation against your dad. But at the same time, it's like Ressler's kind of like, I'm gonna keep an eye on you, so it's gonna be an interesting thing of like probably Reddington kind of backing her up in certain regards while Ressler still kind of investigating. I don't know. She's probably going to back away for a little bit, but she still needs to, because she already sold the real painting at that time or whatever. Maybe, so she already got the money from it. So she might not have to really do it too soon on, for the benefit of the lawsuit and everything. But it could just be a situation of like, Reddington's probably going to need her, which that's going to turn into a complicated thing. Like I said, depending on if Reddington ends up having to, bail her out of being, covering for her when it comes to the Ressler thing. We'll kind of ultimately have to, see on that front. What's also another interesting element to this episode is the continuation of the Iran and Elodie situation, which the fact of the matter is she starts mentioning like, oh my, all the stuff that you work on. Obviously, like Iran is kind of very like secretive about certain things and stuff like that. He tries not to go too far about explaining, because it's like, oh, like you basically arrested the president. He's like, oh, not really. It's like, well, you stopped him because he was going to assassinate his wife. And it's like, well, we kind of didn't we? But then she starts naming blacklisters. So I was like, oh, where did they get their names from and stuff like that? He's like, you are scary. I'm like, is it like, is it because she was able to pump that information from you that she's scary, or the fact is that she remembers these details, which I'm like, that's a little suspicious, the fact that she's holding on to these details like that. I mean, granted, she's a very like, thrill seeker. Every aspect of this complicated relationship has kind of proved that, and things get even more complicated when it's like, oh, her husband has like, a situation like he couldn't like breathe. I think it was like a blood clot they ended up finding out later on, and obviously the nursing lady there is not asking any questions because she sees like, oh, like call 911, and obviously it's like it turns into that complicated thing of like, Iran is kind of like, what should I do, because it's like, because he even talks about it later on with Liz. He's like, I actually kind of felt bad because there was a part of me that's like, maybe it would have been better that he passed on. And for him, it's like, is it wrong to kind of feel like that? Which even like Liz is like, it's a natural situation. It's like, I get it. Your relationship is complicated, but the fact is you're happy and everything. But like the fact is he's thinking like that makes him kind of regret it a little bit. And especially later on, he's like, oh, how's your husband and everything? And she's like, man, we were thinking the same thing. And Rom's like, what are you talking about? She's like, that it would be better if he passed. And he's like, no, I wasn't thinking that. Kind of was. But at the same time, it's like the fact is that I'm partially thinking that and you're kind of thinking it. It's like that for him. It's like that should be a scary sign in itself. Or like we shouldn't go down this path and stuff like that. But then he goes to kind of break it up with her later on, because it's like obviously she cares very deeply for her husband. She wouldn't be kind of working through this whole situation of keeping him alive and everything, but also at the same time, Iran kind of feels weird because it's almost like you're kind of insinuating the fact is that you want your husband dead so that we can be together, and that kind of makes him feel weird. And then it just gets even worse because he's trying to break it off and everything because he really likes her and everything, and he sees that the kind of thrilling life that she kind of wants, them kind of banging on all these different places. I'm like, ooh, the thrill of it all, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's really nice. He's like, it's really, really nice, but I kind of feel wrong about this whole thing. And then they end up sleeping together anyway. But then they're laying in bed together. The fact of the matter is she's in, Aram's arms, and they're listening to the machine that's keeping him breathing and stuff like that. It's like, dude, that's the most awkward, effed up situation. And it's like, how do you handle that? It's like, especially because you want to end a relationship, but it's like, oh, like that's the thing about like something that's so bad for you is so good at the same time. It's like, Aram's in it. It's like, dude, this relationship is so interesting. And I feel like it's going to lead to some like major plot points. I'm just not sure quite what direction that's necessarily going to take in the grand scheme of things, But at the end of the day, with everything that he did, Reddington did get his chest. I did forget to talk about the detail where it was the fact is that Victoria ended up talking about the fact is that was kind of her trial run. So the one he has is the only fake. The rest of them are real. And so he doesn't have the opportunity to kind of make the money he thought he would, because he's like, I could have raked out all the cash and made a huge profit on my own. But it's like, all right, basically I'm gonna have to work together with other people and kind of split the profit, but I can still make a crap ton of money. But now it's like he has to kind of work with other people. I'm curious, like, who are the other like 5 people involved in this situation. I think that's gonna be an interesting little thing. But I also appreciate kind of like him with Liz at the end, and it's like, oh, you know who the counterfeiter is, but you're not going to tell us. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But the fact of the matter is, obviously Liz brings it up again of like, oh, like, who is, was that lady my mom? And obviously Reddington's like, I get it. You want to wholeheartedly believe that was your mom. But the fact of the matter is, it's not, still kind of lying straight to her face. And now, and also the complicated thing of like, oh, she knows that you're lying too. So that's a whole thing in itself. But it's like, I mean, she's kind of gotten used to the fact is that you kind of have a tendency to lie straight to her face. Like I said, Reddington has an aversion to the truth for, the right reasons. And sometimes because it's like, yeah, some secrets are best kept to yourself because you can't trust anyone else with it. I mean, with the complicated situation of Dembe, because Dembe knows everything, so he's one of the few people that Reddington trusts enough to keep these secrets, But what I also think is interesting is the whole thing about Liz looking at this is like, oh, this is supposed to be some kind of lesson, like, oh, this whole conversation about like, oh, look at this like coffin and everything. It's fake and everything. And don't be deceived by things that you kind of believe to be true, which, yes, the irony behind it, that statement and stuff like that. But it's so interesting that she immediately kind of thought of it as a lesson because, like, obviously Reddington does some stuff and there is kind of sometimes a lesson tied to Liz to kind of learn from the whole situation. But no, I love his frankness to be like, no, there wasn't no lesson. I legitimately did this because I'm going to make a shit ton of money off of this situation. But it makes you wonder, there's some deeper to that? Probably not. I mean, you can make the argument for a lesson behind it, but it's interesting because even Liz was kind of like, oh yeah, the whole thing about not seeing, seeing what you kind of want to see and what you believe. I mean, and it's so interesting because obviously she's kind of being super cocky about it and kind of being blatant in his face, him not even realizing like, oh yeah, like, you think my mom's dead? She's not. So you kind of got fooled, not once, you actually kind of got fooled twice. So it makes this whole situation even more interesting, especially because he was holding on to that thing for so long and it was actually a fake the entire time. There's that whole situation. But also it's just kind of like, but something to kind of keep in mind, just because this whole like, oh, the deal has to go down right now. And it's like, that seems super suspicious. And that's why I'm immediately like, we can all agree it's got to be Katarina that set that up, right? Just because, I mean, obviously, like, he let his guard down because, I mean, that's always his thing. He lets his guard down when he thinks people dead. Oh, you killed, Mr. Kaplan. Now that came back to bite you in the ass because you thought she was dead and she wasn't. The fact of the matter is he did that with this whole situation. I mean, to be fair, Katarina's kind of been, probably, figuring things out. I mean, granted, she got everyone off her back, but she could probably use this as an opportunity. Everything that Reddington's doing, she could potentially use as maybe a bargaining chip to kind of get the price off her head, and kind of, finally be able to be a mom and have her family, be a grandmother again, and be a grandmother for real and out in open type of situation. I don't know. It's just like, I just get the inkling just because it's like, the fact is this person is like, oh, the deal is now or never type of situation. I mean, there might be extenuating circumstances, but it's just, I don't know. That seems like where they're kind of potentially taking that. We'll ultimately have to wait to see where everything goes next episode. But regardless, I'm very interested to see where all this ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good